let's take a look at the semi-official. Well, they're official, but they're incomplete. Take a look at this. Came out just a couple of hours ago from the Iowa State Democratic Party. Note, just 62% of the precincts reporting Pete Buttigieg is on top, pretty close to Bernie Sanders there, Elizabeth Warren in third, Joe Biden down there in fourth place, and Amy Klobuchar as well. All right, but only 62% of the precincts reporting. This has been a major, major debacle. I spoke about the potential for weirdness with Doug Wead, the noted presidential historian, author, and advisor, just late last week. A lot of strange things happen in Iowa. Doug Wead, can you hear me, sir?
I hear you. Good to hear you.
Good to see you and hear you. All right. This is shocking even for Iowa.
It sure is. It sure is. And you know what? John F. Kennedy had many famous quotes, and one of them was, "Things don't just happen. They're made to happen."
Well, develop that a little bit, because I'm trying to figure this out. I've got some people screaming it's conservative conspiracy theories when you talk about that they really wanted to throw this thing to Biden, and they didn't want Bernie to walk out of there with credit. And that's why they either sabotaged this app or did something to unleash this technical glitch. Or is it just genuinely a technical glitch and there were no political motivations that brought it on?
No, I'm sorry. You can blame it on a conspiracy theory, but we already have history in both parties, Republican and Democrat, but never this bad. But for example, in 1988 cycle, in 1986, Michigan preempted Iowa. It was called Vietnam because they elected the precinct delegates, so all the presidential candidates had to go into Michigan 2 years early and actually compete in the precincts. And the New York Times reported a story that George H.W. Bush, the sitting vice president, had won on that precinct night voting in 1986. Those precinct delegates were going to go on to the state convention 2 years later and elect their candidate for president from their state. But we didn't win. I was on the Bush campaign. We didn't win. It was a lie. The computers were set up. Lee Atwater bragged on what happened. The New York Times, 6 months later, wrote a report. The votes were actually counted. Pat Robertson, the televangelist, had won. And later he beat us again in Iowa. Dole won Iowa and Robertson second. We were third. We eventually won the nomination. Then in 2012, Mitt Romney was the apparent winner of the Iowa caucus, but a Romney Republican official in Iowa was sitting on a box of ballots, and he didn't release them until later. So several months later, that box was released, and the country learned that Rick Santorum had won the Iowa caucus, not Mitt Romney, but it was too late. And now it's going to be too late. If Pete Buttigieg actually won this caucus, or if Bernie Sanders actually won this caucus, this flub has cost them $40 million at least in publicity and credit and momentum for going to the next contest.
Doug Wead, thank you. It looks like, though, Pete Buttigieg gave himself a star, just declared victory, did all the morning shows, and maybe got a bump out of this after all. This may be maybe the last Iowa caucus that we ever see. You've heard of this guy, Yepsen. He writes for the Des Moines Register, I believe, David Yepsen. He says the rest of the country was already losing patience with Iowa anyway. That's true. And Iowa's goose is cooked, he actually said. He doesn't think this is going to happen again, and he thinks Iowans are going to kill it. Listen, Doug, thank you very much. To be continued, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right. I crack you up.